And now, please welcome Governor Asa Hutchinson.
Thank you. It is so great to be in New Hampshire again. This is about my 8th trip here, and I feel like I've had just about every experience, but I know that's not true. But somebody coming from Arkansas, it is such a thrill to be here. And let me tell you, I support your first in the nation primary. You know, we've had Arkansans come up here before, and you've treated them well. And I love the story of John McKay when he came up here and went basically house to house. And let me tell you, that's what you can do in New Hampshire. But my wife, Susan, who we've been married for 50 years, she'll be coming up here for the first time this coming weekend. So excited about bringing Susan up here. She's such a great campaigner and advocate for me. But I've had the experience of being to a Boston Bruins game, some of the sports fans here, in Exeter, to be on the same stage as Abraham Lincoln is incredible experience for somebody, again, from Arkansas. And so you all have treated us very well during this campaign. I'm grateful for it. Looking forward to being back many times. As you know, I'm running for president of the United States. And I'm running for president because Joe Biden has taken our country in the wrong direction. Whenever you look at the fact that he's wrong on energy policy, he has failed us on border security, he has spent too much money in Washington, D.C. and printed money that's caused inflation and hurt our economy. And as I travel around New Hampshire, and I talk to people, and it's a concern about affordable housing, concern about rent being too high, and the grocery store, and the gas that you're having to spend at the pump, and the price of that. And so those concerns resonate with me, because when you look at my background, I understand affordable housing. I raised our young family in a mobile home until we were able to acquire a little bit more solid structure. But I understand living from paycheck to paycheck in the early parts of my career. And so we come from a common background, and I think it's important that we have leaders in our country that identify and understand the challenges that families face in America today. And we as Republicans, we believe in a limited role of government. We believe in the growth of the private sector more than the growth of the government sector. And those are important principles, right? And so whenever, I was out here visiting with you earlier, and you said, what are you going to do as president? So let me just tell you, as president, whenever I go into office, the first thing I'm going to do is to do an executive order saying we're going to reduce the non-defense federal employment by 200,000 workers. We're going to put in a hiring freeze. We're going to reduce the administrative state. I'm going to tell my director of office and management and budget we're not going to approve regulations that are not consistent with what Congress has said. We're going to make sure that it's not going to be overly burdensome on taxpayers and our small businesses. These are important steps. I'm going to open up our federal lands to more oil and gas leases that will produce energy in the United States of America. When it comes to education, if they give me a bill that abolishes the Department of Education, I will sign it. But notwithstanding whether that comes or not, I'm going to streamline our federal agencies to make them functional and work for the American people again. I'm going to emphasize computer science education. Right now, only 51% of high schools in America even offer computer science. I'm going to make sure that we compete with China in technology, and we're going to teach our young people that in every high school in America. That's done by incentives. That's done by leadership that I will present. Whenever it comes to the border, I'm going to be there myself to make sure that we build the infrastructure. I'm going to call our governors together and say we're not going to be on the opposite side when it comes to protecting the sovereignty of the United States of America. We're going to work together to get that done. Whenever I was in charge of border security during the Bush administration, I worked with governors. And whenever I saw Governor Abbott put in water barriers, my response to that is, and what my response would be if I was the leader of it, I would call my Border Patrol chief in and say, why didn't we think of that? And instead, the Biden administration sues Governor Abbott, saying you don't have the authority to do it. This is not how you accomplish border security. I would be calling up the president of Mexico and saying, we need your cooperation. We're going to work in partnership, and we're going to go after the cartels in Mexico that are controlling the path of fentanyl and human smuggling into the United States of America. This is just the start of a list of things that I know needs to be done as president. Energy policy, our national security, beefing up our military, and making sure that we can control federal spending. I will put in place a budget that Congress can respond to that will lead us toward a balanced budget in this country. And I know we can do it because I did it in Arkansas for 8 years. I left a $2 billion surplus, reduced state government employment by 3,000 workers. And so this is important for our country to accomplish these results. And whenever you look at the challenge that we face globally, I know that we have concerns today in China. We've got to compete, we've got to win. Former President Trump is simply wrong whenever he says that we need to have a 10% tariff on all goods coming to the United States of America, regardless of where they come from. Whenever he puts that protective tariff in, the Tax Foundation says that that will cost us 500,000 jobs, and it would be a $300 billion tax on the American consumer, and it would cause inflation to go up again dramatically. And what he's saying, though, is that we as Americans can't compete on the global stage, that we've got to have protection. I believe that the American worker, the American producer, and the ag people in our country can win and produce and compete, and we don't have to have that protection that would hurt the American consumer. And so let's think through what we need to do and the policies that we need to implement. I want to turn it open for questions in just a minute, but I'm proud of the fact that I bring a level of experience to this race for president that is unmatched by anyone else at the federal and the state level. As a governor, as head of the DEA, Homeland Security, and where I had the responsibility to protect Americans from a terrorist attack on our soil after 9/11. I've been in the Situation Room with the President of the United States where it was my responsibility to secure flights that were being targeted by terrorists. It was my responsibility to set up the first visa security office in Saudi Arabia. I've been there. I understand the risk. I've been there to Israel and saw their security apparatus. And so foreign policy, national security, border security, and whenever you look at the rule of law that we have in our country, you need a former federal prosecutor that knows how to take on the swamp in Washington, D.C. And I can do that. We're here in Nashua, and I had a meeting with your chief of police, really a law enforcement summit, in which I met with the undercover officers that work here in this area on drug trafficking, on the challenges that we face with opioid abuse and fentanyl. And I heard from your chief, Rourke, who's doing a fantastic job. I listened to the undercover agents, and after I left, he texted me later in the day and said they just apprehended someone who is transporting a full kilo of fentanyl into this community. That's good police work. For those of you who don't follow it that closely, a kilo of fentanyl is enough to kill 500,000 people. It has that potential according to the DEA statistics. And so whenever you're looking at these challenges, we have to go after the cartel. But we also have to engage in education of our young people to make the right decisions. And we have to have the addiction counseling support that is needed for these challenges that we face. That is my vision of America. And whenever you look at our future, I'm optimistic about it, and you need to have a president that will bring out the best of America and not appeal to our worst instincts. That, to me, is what leadership is about, and that's what I want to bring to our country, to bring out the freedoms that we enjoy, to bring out the innovation in our competition, and how America can win and lead again. Thank you very much. And I've got time for questions. I intentionally saved time, so let's hear it. I know New Hampshire likes to ask questions. So who do we got? If you don't ask a question, I'm going to keep talking. Yes, sir, back in the back. All right, thank you. The question is about the current conflict in Israel. And of course, I expressed my support to Israel when I went on the debate stage, and I wore a joint United States and Israel flag to show our long-standing partnership and commitment to them. The United States of America should have one singular voice, and that is, we support Israel. And I'll just tell you, whenever you see the atrocities of Hamas, how can anyone stand up and say somehow that is justified, or somehow Israel's not doing the right thing and going after and destroying Hamas? And yet we see the United Nations Security Council can't even agree on that fundamental principle of rejecting barbaric behavior. The United Nations is failing us in that regard. Whenever you look at Europe and the fact that you've got protests supporting Hamas and protesting Israel, this is extraordinary. And so America's leadership is critically important. And think of it in these terms. What if the United States of America was not there to support Israel? Where would they go? Would it be Europe? You can't go to Russia. You can't go to their neighbors. The United States of America role in the world stage is critically important. And there's those candidates that want to shrink our responsibility. And I know that we've got to be careful about our funds, but America has to be strong so that we can support and oppose oppression across the globe, and particularly whenever you see an ally as Israel being attacked by a terrorist group. We have to be strong, loyal, and supportive. Yes, ma'am.
What do you think we should do with the 20 million or plus illegals that are here now?
Well, that number was has been about 13 million or 11 million. Excuse me. 20 years ago it was 11 million. And so we haven't done anything in 20 years, and now it's grown, of course. And so as president, the first thing I would do would be to submit a border enforcement bill to Congress. We've got to be able to increase our resources there. We've got to make sure we build the infrastructure that is needed. We've got to reform our asylum laws. We've got to make sure that American sees we're going to protect our sovereignty. That's number one. Now, the question is, and we're not even going to address those here in terms of any comprehensive immigration reform until we secure the border. Now, as president, during that time, you're going to concentrate on exporting those that came in here unlawfully. You're going to deport those that have violated our laws, because that's the first way that you're going to be able to come across them in our society generally. And so you're going to hear from Mr. Holman a little bit later, who, when I created ICE at Homeland Security, I was in charge of that responsibility. We actually enforce the law, and he's going to talk about some of the ways that can be done again. Yes.
So the Inflation Creation Act put a lot of money on the table. It can't be spent in the next 2 years. Can you, as president, get some of it back for us?
Yes.
How much can you get back?
Well, I don't have the exact number that I could get back, but and this puts life in perspective. We've spent about $100 billion in Ukraine in terms of supporting them. The last Inflation Reduction Act was over $1.2 trillion, and no Republican voted for it, and the costs are underestimated. And so, as governor, I turned back money. You know, we had too much federal money coming in. We didn't need it. I turned it back. Much of that has not been spent, and it might take some congressional support to withdraw all of it that hasn't been spent, but I would work toward that because that would take some of the inflationary pressure out of our economy. Yes, sir.
I say this with respect. In some respects, you're my favorite candidate.
This is where the tough part comes in. I know what's coming here. Yes, sir.
However, your presence, for that matter, Doug Corrigan's in the race, makes a situation that is too confusing for voters. The net result is that Trump gets whatever it is, 40%, and the rest of you spread it out. It's confusing a race that ought to be clarified for voters. When are you going to...
Who would you clarify it around? Who's your candidate that should take on Donald Trump?
Governor, I like you, but you apparently are not catching on.
Okay, so with all due respect, I couldn't disagree more. There was a conclave out in Utah recently where the donors got together and said, we need to reduce the field. My response to that is, let New Hampshire reduce the field. There's a reason there's a first in the nation primary, and that is that you can cast votes here and determine who should go forward in this campaign. And my goodness, yes, I talked to some of you earlier, and you said, please, get in here. We're going to make sure that you vet the candidates. And so let's see how that turns out. I will say that I'm convinced the field of candidates will reduce very quickly after New Hampshire and after those 4 early states vote. And that's soon enough, but let's give the voters a chance to determine the future of our country, and it starts here in New Hampshire. All right, they're saying I've got to go. Listen, you all are terrific. Thanks for the respect you give. I look forward to being with you. Asa2024.com, and I'd love to be in your home. Invite your neighbors in. Thank you very much.